seats. Be great, thank you.
Did you start it? All right.
I'll start the timer.
You ready? Hello, everybody. Happy Saturday. Thanks so much for coming. I'm really excited to be here. My name is Billy Guerrero, and we're here to launch Perdido by Michael. So happy. Yeah, that's what I want to hear. Yep. So I met Michael more than 2 years ago when I was trying to put together a haiku workshop in Littleton, and we clicked immediately. We both love haiku and short Japanese forms. And right away I can see Michael was passionate about writing, and he's ready to throw himself into it full time like it was his job. It's just like he had that passion. He's ready to go. And I'm so happy to have a new haiku partner in haiku crime. So we formed the Payday Plums Haiku Workshop about 2 years ago. We've been going strong for 2 years. It's a great source of happiness for me. The poems that the group turn in always surprise and inspire me. We have some superstars in the group. I see Jeannie right there. I'm a superstar. I feel like a superstar. But Michael's a superstar. I go as far as to say that if our haiku group was a basketball team, Michael would be our Larry Bird. Nope, he'd be our Nikola Jokic. He's the man in the middle. He can score, he can pass, play defense. He has eyes in the back of his head. He can do it all. No, he's a generous and kind teammate. And he offers thoughtful feedback, turns in great work, and he keeps us laughing throughout the whole 2 hours that we meet. I'm so glad that we met, and I'm glad that we meet every month to talk about haiku and small poems. One more thing Michael and I have in common, we both grew up in the south suburbs of Boston. I grew up in a little town about 20 miles south of Boston called Holbrook, and Michael's from Brockton, which borders Holbrook down there. And our moms now live within a mile of each other in Quincy, Massachusetts, right south of Boston. One more thing, my beautiful wife Christina designed the book cover of this beautiful book that we're here to hear about today. Thank you. So thanks very much for coming out today. You're in for a treat. Let's have a big round of applause for our hero and our man of the day, Michael Drummy.
Thank you, Billy. That was exactly what I sent to him. So
Nailed it.
I am thrilled that you are all here. So many familiar faces and a couple people who I guess walked in off the street. So welcome. Yeah, Michelle. I was not surprised that you came in with Michelle because that's how it usually happens. I guess before we start, I wanted to apologize. I don't want to offend anyone with this T-shirt that I'm wearing because if there's any illiterate Nazis out there, I mean Shane, but Shane's not illiterate, so. But it was just next guy up in the T-shirt drawer. So I will during the reading today. I'll talk a little bit about some of the poems, but not all of them. And I was thinking it was funny because my father passed away almost 10 years ago, but he was here. Maybe it was 20 years ago, and we went. Melissa, my wife, and I went, and my brother was here, my father, and we had dinner just down the street here. And Melissa and my sister-in-law had a little too much to drink. So my father had to drive her car, and it was a Standard. And I remember him saying, they were on a hill, and I remember she told me, because I drove my own car, but she told me later, she said, your father's crazy, because when he got in the car, he said, okay, girls, hang on to your chastity belts. And my father he had a million of those. So that's what I want to say here. Hang on to your chastity belts for those of you in attendance, because we're going to have a good time today. Yep. I want to thank, there's so many people, I thanked some in the book, but I thank everyone here for coming. It's good to see you.
Great to see you.
Yeah. And I see there's still folks coming in. Welcome. Aaron, good to see you. I did especially want to say, and I know Billy mentioned this, but I especially wanted to thank Christina for designing the cover of the book, because it meant a lot to me. I will get to why it means so much to me. Christina and Billy know, Melissa knows, a couple of other people know, but there's a story behind, quite a story behind this particular piece that's on the cover by a good friend of ours who passed away a couple of years ago, Gary Collitz. But without further ado, I'm going to begin to read my book.
Yeah.
It's about time. And I'm just going to start with the first one.
Yeah, good one.
It's a little lighthearted. I think we can all agree that puppy mills are a bad idea. And I don't even know that much about them. I'm not a dog person either, or at least I don't think of myself as a dog person, since I only officially had a dog as a pet for less than a week in my entire life. Nor really a cat person, or even a pet person, if such a thing actually exists, which I'm sure it does in some odd Facebook group kind of way I don't know about and never will. Although I did keep a fish named Brad in a glass bowl for about 18 months, once. I fed him the flakes every day, and he cleaned his tiny home every other week, and he seemed as happy a creature as could be expected for one who hangs out 24/7 in a small, transparent container for the whole world to see. No privacy, that's why they call it a fishbowl, I guess. Nowhere to go except in a circular infinity of what I often thought of as some kind of aquatic purgatory. And then, of course, he was, in the end, flushed down the commode, replaced in his bowl by a plant that promptly died as well. So when the nice young man with the trim beard from the Humane Society gently accosted me outside Walgreens this afternoon, I signed that petition to ban puppy mills as quickly as I could without ever once making eye contact. This was written and dedicated to my mother, but she kind of inspired this, and she's still with us. Actually, I did want to mention, this cap was intentional, and the main reason is because my mother told me it makes me look like Whitey Bulger. And she's almost 90, but still, when your mother tells you not to do something or it looks bad on you, that's all you ever want to do, right? It just works. So. Anyhow, this is for my mother. It's called Bitterroot. Bitterroot, an herb, a river, wilderness. Combine all three for an intoxicating tea. This line gets us from there to here. A cool August morning, vestigial crickets, the song of an American robin, of America. Where are we again? Bitterroot. Think it through to the end. Upon awakening, I imagine when I can return to bed again. At day's end, I tell myself, the end of days, my days filled with nothing other than thoughts of me as your young, now grown-up son, from birth to this day today, in Bitterroot. Double T, double R, double O. Easy to remember for one who once surveyed the empty sage land of Wyoming with you, marveling at the rose-colored blooms that appeared as though scattered by an unseen hand across the barren earth. Easy for me to recall still, but not for you, whose feet, like mine, cannot be felt, just sensed like Virga, the rain that does not fall from darkened clouds. these many little deaths of memory you've buried deep within your worn-out soul that flutters lifelessly above the sandy banks of the river known as Bitterroot. I don't see Mary here. But this one is for Mary. This is on 7, Arroyo. Our good friend Mary. I wrote this. Mary used to live in New Mexico for many years and just recently moved back to Denver. And Melissa and I spent some time down there kind of house sitting for her, dog sitting, for a couple of weeks. And this poem came out of that. Arroyo. Cheapened, descending, she dances briefly in the pink wind, rotisseried airborne like rocks. Tornadoes split. Oh, pretty pups, what have you found in that forsaken arroyo? A strange dampness, bare grass whipped, sausage-like beneath the striated mesa, pelted by sanded sleet, calling you both home where treats offered in the palm of her hand await. The sleeping cholla, resistant, patient, slowly spiders itself awake, its yellow bulbs cold to the touch. Through her window she spies the twirling crow, threading its way north into the squall of snow, the dogs now warm and safe. She has heard that on the high road through Cañones at night, if you are not careful, you can catch the emerald glint in the eyes of the coyotes, reflected in the headlights, peculiar and astonished. There, in the mute darkness, upon their king-size bed, one dog on either side of her worn and swollen hips, she begins the letting go of him again. The next poem was written when Melissa and I, this is actually a little bit of a story with this poem because it was, Melissa and I lived in Ecuador back in 22 for most of that year. Right after we retired, we went down there, and we'd been there for many times, but we went down there and lived there for a good chunk of 2022. There's a river down there. It's the city we lived in, Cuenca, is Ciudad de los Cuatro Rios, right? The city of the 4 rivers. And one of the rivers is the Tomebamba, and we would walk on that river almost every day. We'd walk along that river, and often you would see people down along the banks with families, and they'd be washing potatoes. I mean, huge sacks of potatoes. And I remember when we were walking there one day, and I don't know why I thought about this, but I thought about Van Gogh's paintings of the workers in the fields and the haystacks and all that. And I said to Melissa, I'm going to write a poem about these people. And so I did. And it was, I had just started writing, and I knew when I finished it, it was a good poem. And I submitted it. I don't think it didn't get published till later, but it was picked up by, a pretty respectable literary journal. And it was the first time I felt like, I'm pretty good at this. Like, I didn't know before then. But this poem, I'm going to read, The Potato Washers at the Tomebamba. It means a lot to me. It was, anyhow, the other thing I will say, this helps to get me back on track, was I had one of the poets I loved when I was younger was Gerard Manley Hopkins. I think he was British, but he lived in Ireland. He was a Jesuit. And I still love his poetry, but I always loved the way it flowed. And this poem has a lot of Hopkins-like influences. So, the potato washers at the Tomebamba. Upstream, due west of the Centro, far below the gentle headwaters that rise in the regal Cajas, where the river, splitting, spits, crashing over the golden boulders toward the city, you will find them. Methodically, the men lug in the women scrub the meaty papas, knee-deep in the rushing stream, booted, festooned in the bright raiment of the indigenous, striped sacks bulging on the wide, grassy banks, while their niños play nearby, shaded under pungent eucalyptus and weeping bottle brush, a tapestry of winged clockvine cascading in the wisping zephyrs, black auburn and emerald, a dappled, dizzying sun of 1,000 shifting sparks shimmering on the surface of the unsoiled agua that slakes the thirst of their only earth. This is for my wife, for Melissa. It's called That Afternoon on Inishmaan. And Inishmaan is one of the Aran Islands off the west coast of Ireland, where we spent a few days with my mother and sister, 15 years ago. And so here it is. I think I will take a drink of water first. Okay. That afternoon on Inishmaan, fragments, sand, glass, a picture window, eyes closed, we gaze out across the limestone wasteland, waves crashing nearby, sea spray on our faces, rain shells flapping in the breeze, the role of emptiness in our lives now made manifest, sheep grazing on the hillside, wind turbines whirring, clouds low, sunlight filtering through. You remove your sunglasses, your lustrous eyes, and taking my hand in our middle age, say, if this, my dear, were to be our last best dream, if it were to be, if it were. This is for Billy.
Oh, nice.
Bluebirds on the bus. You take the bus to an appointment at the university, but it's the wrong day. On the way home, you notice a young woman with a child seated across from you. She sports a gold brooch with a bluebird engraved on it. You recede into memories of bluebirds filling the backyard during the warm months of your childhood. Their gentle warble and cerulean shade, announcing them as your mother's favorite. She would assemble tiny houses with tiny peaks where they could stay while visiting for the season, miniature Airbnbs. You tell the woman how much you admire her pin. She thanks you, says she's just moved here with her daughter to start a new life. She recently quit drinking and left an abusive situation. She's looking for a meeting. Can you help with that? You can. You've been sober for years. You could have worn a Panama hat today, or speared a white whale, or listened to Billie Eilish. You could be lying among leaves on an expansive green lawn. You could be nesting in one of your mother's tiny houses. You are heading home on this bus.
Yeah.
This is a little longer one. This poem is entitled Rapid City Ash. And it has to do with the artist who created the collograph that's on the cover here. Gary Collitz. I don't think I'll say much more about it. It's a sad poem, but Gary meant a lot to Melissa and I, and his widow, Kathy, who still lives in Ecuador. We're still good friends with her. And she's mentioned in here. Rapid City Ash. It's not easy to be cremated in Ecuador, especially for a gringo. Of course, for the right price, you can pretty much get anything done here. On Thursday, the four of us drove up to the national park west of the city. 5 of us, really, I guess, since you sat on Kathy's lap in the polished mahogany box. We wandered about in the peaceful santuario, looking for the ideal place to say our final despedidas. We actually found 2. One at the Tomebamba headwaters, the other in the wild greensward of the Paramo. At the river, Melissa and your Kathy each dropped a handful of you into the water. Above the rushing stream, Kathy whispered, "Bye, Gary." Melissa reminded us that you will never be forgotten. The soft pine trees on either side of the bridge nodded their mute consent. On the open heath, beneath a giant crucifix you would have loathed, and surrounded by the Cajas peaks, Frankie, like Johnny Appleseed in a bright orange Nike sweatshirt, silently sowed most of you among the high grass, sig and yucca, creating fleeting, Virga-like dry clouds out of the bleached ash. For my part, before casting the last of you to the Andean breeze, I called you a selfish prick who was, in life, so painfully beautiful the world had to look away. Later, at lunch, Kathy gave me that 1957 Kodachrome print of you at 15, with your older sister, Donnie, her right hand on your shoulder, her left holding onto the back of the plaid chaise lounge in which you sit, sleeves rolled up like James Dean, squinting toward the camera into the South Dakota sun. Is that Denver Bohemian? It's good to see you. I haven't got to yours yet. Okay. This is another poem that it's long, and it was another one that it was a couple of years ago, I guess I wrote it, and then it was picked up pretty quick for publication, but it has to do, I'm responding to a poem that I read by a poet named Donald Platt. He's mentioned in here. And it's fun. I love writing poetry. And you can do whatever you want. It's called poetic license, right? It's like being a little autocrat. Anyhow, I didn't know this fella Donald. I read this poem, and then I wrote this poem in kind of response to it. It really resonated with me. And then we connected. And he's in Purdue, he's in Indiana, but he grew up in Massachusetts himself.
Oh, cool.
But this was another one of these poems where it was like, again, it was, I know how to do this. Like, it gave me confidence. And it's long, but it's funny. Some of it. It's on page 26, by the way. To anyone who has ever said that a poem cannot teach us anything practical, you have not read Donald Platt's Boundary Waters, because if you had, you would have discovered, as I did, that a rollator is not the same as a walker. A walker typically has hard rubber feet on the bottom of each of its 4 hollow aluminum legs for exceptional stability, in which, with every step taken, needs to be lifted forward by the gait-impaired individual who then steps into the area where their walker was just a moment before. It can be slow going. By comparison, the sporty rollator, as the name implies, is an assistive mobility device that rolls along the floor, gliding effortlessly in sync with the person's every movement. Brakes are used to stop the thing, and it often includes a convenient seat on which a person can rest. Many rollators have a small storage basket or case for the individual to carry essential personal items such as books or perhaps an electronic tablet. Walkers rarely include any of these features, but both devices allow for ample height adjustment. Having recently been diagnosed with idiopathic peripheral neuropathy myself, and making a fruitless trip right before Christmas to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, where the dozens of tests I underwent all proved inconclusive, I found Donald's mention in passing in his poem of his body with its nerve pain, unable to walk anymore without its rollator, somehow oddly comforting. I can see my future now. Rollator, walker, wheelchair, bed. And that is if I'm lucky. The boundary waters in northern Minnesota that Donald dreams of navigating in a canoe with his wife are off limits to both of us now. My whole life I have pushed up against and sometimes through boundaries of my own creation, or those that, for whatever reason, appeared before me seemingly out of nowhere, circumscribing my life in a dizzying array of situations and beliefs and decisions that today seem peculiar, petty, and simply irrelevant. Already unsteady on my feet for one who, until just a few years ago, ran half marathons every other weekend, I know that I will find it increasingly difficult to walk, and then to walk at all, and then to be able to sit up, then to feed, dress, bathe, and toilet myself. I will decline. I will require care from nurses, or perhaps my partner in life, if she is still here with me and able to do so. Friends and family will visit me if I am so fortunate, and then I too will begin to dream of crystal clear, boundaryless waters that straddle the border between the United States and Canada, where the rocks on the bottom can be seen from a canoe as through glass, and of beginnings I will make again with everyone I have ever loved. And I will whisper at the end to anyone who has ever said that a poem cannot teach us anything practical, to listen closely to the water lapping on the shore of the melting lake that forms the edge of everything we know, and for the solitary call of the loon as it dissolves in the vagrant wind. This next one's for Bob. And it's actually written, I had just read the biography, I guess autobiography, of Lucinda Williams, the musical artist. This is on 30. My many ghosts from Canal Street, for Lou. So here's the thing. It's New Orleans, mid-70s, Mardi Gras, 2 weeks of shit-crazed revelry terminating with Lent's somber kickoff. I had just dropped out of college in a blaze of angel dust. My parents were splitting up. Things were not going well for me. I sold bird whistles on Canal Street during the parades. It was fun. My friend got hold of some psilocybin. We thought it would be like the cemetery scene from Easy Rider. Instead, after several hours of bug-eyed nausea and incomparable paranoia, at my urging, we wound up in the emergency room of Charity Hospital. For some reason, I told them we had consumed spoiled meat. They let us sit in the waiting room for a few hours, and then we left, just like that. At the time, he was pissed at me. We eventually came down in Jackson Square. At the time, I asked myself, why did you take this crap? I had done mescaline and acid before, and both times it had ended badly. Now here I was in Crescent City, a college dropout from New England with soon-to-be divorced parents, hawking plastic tutors on the boulevard. My friend and I had flown down to New Orleans from D.C. On the plane, we met a guy who offered to put us up at his apartment. He was sketchy and odd, but so were we. My friend stayed for a few days and then returned to D.C. I remained for the entire fortnight right up to Fat Tuesday. On Ash Wednesday, I got out on I-10 and hitched west toward Houston. Somewhere around Beaumont, I was let out at an off-ramp. There is, at times, a certain precariousness to our moods and actions when thrown into unfamiliar situations. I understand it is some kind of evolutionary feature, a way of extending a little further our antenna for survival. This was one of those moments. I disappeared into the East Texas night, crickets chirping and bullfrogs croaking. It took years for me to resurface. So tell me, Lou, were you busking on the streets of New Orleans when I was there 50 years ago? Did I walk past you and not give it a second thought? Did we stand online together at Buster's for red beans and rice? Did you hear me call out, "Get your Mardi Gras bird whistles right here. Get 'em right here." You went on to undress the sun and kiss the moon. I would stand below milk chalk mesas and on barren tundra, tracking bighorn. Years later, when I heard Pineola for the first time, I wept. You could have been singing about my own brother, too fragile for this sweet old world. The lies we tell ourselves are the only ones that count among the endless perjuries that cradle us to sleep. The next one is entitled Salem Menthol. And I know that Bob likes that one too. Salem Menthol. First kiss, first cigarette. Turning 14 that August while camping near Ossipee. The big hits on the jukebox all summer long from Cosmo's Factory in Chicago and the Carpenters. Ma running the campground store with 3-year-old Matt in tow. Mickey, my sister's best camp friend, and I stashing packs of Salem menthols between nooks and the granite boulders. Day trips to view the old man of the mountains and sail on Winnipesaukee. Dad driving up from Boston on the weekends and taking us all to the drive-in one night in the black and white Rambler station wagon for a double feature. Let It Be and Alice's Restaurant, playing pool in the rec hall on a rainy Saturday to Ball of Confusion, drinking sweet, clear, bottled birch beer around the fire on a terrace of pine needles, Neil Young screaming about Nixon and tin soldiers, Mass on Sundays at St. Joseph's, my brother and I cleaning out the communal toilets for a few bucks a week and sharing a canvas tent perched on a wooden platform we built with our bare hands, whispering shit for the first time, hiking to an Appalachian overlook to pick wild blueberries, hardly sleeping all summer because of fireflies and what's next, kissing Mickey with that cool tobacco taste in our mouths, learning to water ski together on Big Dan Hole Pond, greasy sunscreen and sticky mosquito repellent, wishing her older brother all the best at the Labor Day party we threw for him before shipping out to Vietnam. This is for Carol. Polvadera Creek. This is a creek up in northern New Mexico. Polvadera Creek. Well, let me just say, I'm going to quote someone here. Jory Graham is a poet at Harvard, and I had just read her book, To 2040, which is worth reading if you can get it. Polvadera Creek. Thus it was we came to no longer reach the ocean. Jory Graham. There were reports of a bear in the area that summer, twice a day, in the morning and then again at dusk. We would walk the dogs on the gravel track all the way out to the sluice gates. We'd bring whistle, spray, a 6-iron. The dogs would kick up dust on the exposed ridge before entering the cool bosque. They'd stand in the creek where it is so narrow you can hop across it. Here we would listen to the mountain songbirds, towhee, yellow-breasted chat, bush-tit, indigo bunting. The meadow was ringed by Indian paintbrush and white evening primrose. Scattered about were hardy fleabane, sweet clover, red-stemmed storksbill, tiny wild geraniums with a slight citrus scent. We never saw evidence of a bear, no scat, no tracks, not so much as a rustling in the dense pine. Then, one evening, just as the sun was setting, we came upon a muscular sorrel mare drinking in the middle of the creek, a young brown woman seated bareback and nursing, her long black hair flowing down her back and shoulders, having descended from the Sipin Mesa. That day, the creek flowed through the forest, emptying into the desert lake miles away, gushing through the channel below the dam, churning toward the Rio Grande and the Gulf of Mexico. But what of tomorrow? Horse and rider and child remain there still. They could make the water. They could bring it to us. Would we drink? This is a short one for Chelsea. The title of it is 1790, and then there's a note to it, which I'll read. I'll read the note now, then I'll read the poem. There are disagreements concerning the number of untitled poems Emily Dickinson actually composed. The first Harvard University Press paperback edition of the Poems of Emily Dickinson, edited by R.W. Franklin and published in 2005, tallies 1789. So the title of this poem is 1790. 1790. For some reason, I feel like Emily Dickinson today. A timid, untitled bird, wings clipped, descending, zen-like, through nesting galls of loneliness toward the unwelcome potsherds of deceit, fearsome relics of the archaeology of the soul, life in chaos, nature unbound from intention, random, flailing. Will I never get my ducks in a row again? This is for Cassie. Clarence and Ginny, after Gwendolyn Brooks. Clarence and Ginny, the justice and his wife at the insurrection. He black, she white. They rich, they right. They fly, they smart, they laugh, they bought. He smoke, she maim. He Tom, she Jane. Okay. This was another one of those poems that was picked up by a bunch of journals, and one of them published it. But one of the beautiful things I love again about writing poetry is you can be in. This is this is after Louis. This is on page 63. True Citrus. Louise Glick is a Nobel Prize winning poet, and I read Mock Orange by her. It's one of her most famous poems, and I was inspired to write this. And it's like, isn't it the coolest thing that you can just write a poem? Responding to a Nobel Prize winner, it's like the coolest thing. And that's what I did. And it's I think it's a good poem. True Citrus, after Louise Glick's Mock Orange. It is the delusion that comes first, I tell you, not the wild geraniums in the untended vale. It is the delusion that germinates, persists, telling us we can be happy as a couple, spreading its strangling roots well into our later years. You would say of us now, I'm not unhappy with our marriage, and that would be enough for you. Consider instead the wild geranium, whose essence is subtle, as though it were holding something back out of fear or perhaps coyness. On the moraine, it is easy to overlook them. They're weedy, close to the ground. They do not announce themselves. One must make the effort to identify them, to kneel on the earth, to bend close to their petals, sinking one's nose into their loose corums, to detect the discreet fragrance that has been there all along. What is it? Ah, sweet lemons. Why do I love that odor? Why such elation that this scent survives in our world? And this is for Shane. For those of you who do not know Shane, he is the #1 Rockies fan in the world, probably. And I know there's a program for that, for whatever it is that is. I know there's a program for it, but we keep trying to get him into it, and he insists on continuing with that obsession. The title of this is Dulce de Ego, and it's a play on the words. It's a play on the word. Dulce de Ego, for those of you, the Spanish ego is fig. So again, this is written in Ecuador. They had this great, they probably have it here too, right? But they had this great meal or it's a dessert, a sweet at holidays. And anyhow, I wrote this poem, and I was not thinking of Shane then, but he did come to mind today. Dulce de Ego. I am the blackened happy fig, swimming in a pool of dark sweetness with my fellow figs, waiting for the moment after you spoon me into one of those smaller cut glass bowls of yours, reserved for special occasions like Carnival, sheltered by a few pieces of common queso. When you slice me open, my tiny seeds exposed, and place me ever so gently onto your anticipating tongue.
It's very disturbing.
Yep. Indeed it is. All right, I've got just a few left, and this one is entitled Go to Your Settings. Go to your settings and click on the Amazon delivery guy who just dropped off a package for you on your front doorstep. Then click on the electric Amazon delivery vehicle that transported the delivery guy and your package to your neighborhood. Then click on the Amazon warehouse 30 miles from your front doorstep where your package was loaded onto the electric delivery vehicle. Then click on the Amazon warehouse worker who inserted the item you purchased this morning into a box with plastic packing bubbles. Then click on the real estate team that found the land on which the Amazon warehouse would be built just off the interstate. Then click on the family who owned that land for 4 generations and sold it to a real estate company that would subdivide and develop it. Then click on the irrigated fields that alternately produced crops and lay fallow while that family leased them out for decades. Then click on the patent office that issued the homestead patents for 2 160-acre parcels of land given to 2 brothers from that family over 100 years ago. Then click on the military officers who claimed that land from the indigenous people on behalf of the United States government after the Colorado War. Then click on each leader of each tribe of the indigenous peoples of the Great Plains before returning to Amazon that piece of crap you just bought. And remember to leave a review. This is for my daughter Erin. Turquoise. Whenever you leave to fly back home, I become a half-eaten chicken burrito smothered with Christmas sauce, turning cold and hard in the high desert air of northern New Mexico, waiting for the indigenous busboy to carry me into the noisy kitchen where I'll be scraped off the enamel plate into the garbage disposal by one of the dishwashing crew, just as the turquoise sun begins to set behind the Jemez Mountains. So the last poem is Perdido, and there's a little bit of a story. I had written this poem a couple of years ago, or longer, before, and it had a different title, and it's not the way it looks today. And I wasn't happy with it, but then our friend Gary, the artist, passed away and a couple of years ago, and his widow and the archivist of his estate uploaded hundreds, thousands probably of outstanding pieces of art of his. Gary was a master printer, and so I was going through it one day, and I came upon a number of collagraphs, and I didn't know what a collagraph was. And I read about it, and a collagraph, for those of you who don't know, and I didn't, is, and I may be mistaken about this, but it's my understanding that it's made, either often made or always made with organic materials, like, again, as a print. So it'd be like leaves, soil even, grass, that kind of stuff. And so I'd already written this poem, and I found out, I saw this, I was looking through these collagraphs, found out what a collagraph was, and then I came across the one that's on the cover here, and it's entitled Perdido. And in the middle, near the middle of this, there's a figure, to me it looked like, it's kind of a Where's Waldo thing. It looked like a figure either, raising their hand in the air, human figure, or raising both hands over their head. And I just knew that if I ever had a book published, well, first of all, I changed the title of this poem, the title of the poem I had to Perdido, and fooled around with it and cleaned it up a bit. But I knew if I ever had a book published that I would want this print on the cover, because it all came together. There's such a thing called an ekphrastic poem, where you see a work of art and it inspires you to write. That's not what happened here. It was kind of the other way around. But nonetheless, the fact, and again, thanks to Christina and a couple of other people, folks that aren't here, Gary, of course, and his widow, Kathy, I was able to get this, because it was not easy with this publisher, let me tell you. I had to kind of fight for it. So it means a lot to me that this painting is on here. Gary was, he was world renowned, and he could be a prick. And he was an artist. I mean, he was one of the few people I had ever met who he was completely devoted to his art. And he inspired me. And the last thing I'll say before I read this is I had started to write poetry when we were living down there, and I would see Gary a lot back in 22, and he was not doing well at the time. And I'd bring poems over to him. It was my first attempts at things. And I remember one of the last things he said to me was, I had given him probably 4 or 5 poems, and he says, "I like the short ones." So, okay. But I kept that in mind. I always keep it in mind. Anyhow, this is Perdido. That July, not long after he passed at 39, the family gathered at midday in a cool, quiet glen in the hardwood wilderness of Vermont. His mother plunged her hand into the clear plastic bag of bone fragments and dust, and pulling her mottled fist from the sack of death, raised it above her head, proclaiming, "This is my son." Wildly she cast him about, handful after handful, the gray ash of him settling on leaves and grass. The earth marked with his sacramental pigment. Her silver hair and arms were covered with him, her eyes throbbing through tears. Those assembled tried to console her, but they were, all of them, lost. Like he'd been ever since the divorce, like the pain he'd swathed with OxyContin, like the bullet he used to kill himself that was never found at the bottom of that clear plastic bag. Thank you.
Bravo.
Yeah. One more big round of applause for Michael. That was great. All right, Michael will be signing books over there. Help yourself to food. It's a beautiful day. Thanks for coming.